Committee will be in order, and thank you very much for joining us today as we consider H.R. 2775.
Mr. Chairman, when you finish, I'd like a moment of personal privilege, if you don't mind.
I would be very pleased to extend that, gentleman. Would the gentleman like to do that now?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would ask you to ask that we have a moment of silence for Celeste West's loss of Barker. I know you and I and Jim, Louise, if she were here, we saw Barker lots of times when he was little, but if we could do that.
We couldn't, and in fact, I would like to join with you in that, but first I'd like to say that probably Celeste is watching the committee right now, and that we did anticipate that Celeste West, who you may or may not, those in this room, that Celeste's son, Franklin Barker West, was killed in a car accident over the weekend. Barker was killed in a car accident in South Carolina on Friday afternoon. I found out today that, in fact, Barker would be considered a fraternity brother of mine, a member of the Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity. And, in fact, we all do join with, as has been talked about, the entire Rules Committee and Celeste's friends were all heartbroken for Celeste, her family, and everyone that knew Barker. Those of us who've been around here for a while remember Barker as he used to come and go and sit in the back over here. He was a young man who was not only vivacious but expressed his love for his mother and for life itself. And our prayers do go out to Celeste and the family on this tragedy. And I would ask, as has been suggested, that we all take a moment of silence to recognize the life of Franklin Barker West and the love of his mother at this time. Thank you very much. The committee is pleased today to also recognize that we've had those, we will not be announcing them, but those who have been married over the break here, and we would offer our congratulations to those unsaid, but who would be on the Democrat side who engaged in matrimony, and a hearty congratulations. You know, out of respect and consideration, I would tell you that I've been warned in a dream to say nothing more than what I already have, but a hearty congratulations there also. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Today, the committee will consider H2775, the No Subsidies Without Verification Act of 2013. This important piece of legislation injects vital accountability and oversight measures into the implementation of the health care exchanges established under what is known as Obamacare. On Friday, July the 5th, the Obama administration released over 600 pages of new rules and regulations pertaining to the implementation and enforcement of the President's new health care law. Contained in those regulations was an announcement that the administration would no longer verify the eligibility requirements for subsidies and cost-sharing programs, which was stated needed to be done in the law. Instead, it would rely on applicants to self-attest as to their eligibility. In other words, self-reporting. Such limited oversights creates the opportunities for extensive waste, fraud, and abuse, and I would suggest to you is simply unworkable. It is unworkable and unfair to people who would be following the law and those who would have self-reporting. The United States Congress must work, I would hope, on a bipartisan basis to ensure the integrity of all government programs and prevent any unnecessary or inappropriate use of limited federal funds. After all, the American people should deserve that every single dollar that is necessary is fine, but not one penny more to waste, fraud, or abuse. I want to thank my dear friend, the gentlewoman from Tennessee, Congresswoman Black, and today representing the Republican team will be the gentlewoman from North Carolina, bringing thoughtful and responsible legislation to us today that will allow us to be able to effectively understand the impact of the administration, the impact of them not following the law and seeking not to have the verifications that would be necessary. So we welcome Congresswoman Elmers and the gentleman from New Jersey, the gentleman, Congressman Pallone, and look forward to their testimony. And certainly, here in just a minute, without objection, anything that you have in writing will be entered into the record without objection. And I would yield at this time to the gentleman from Massachusetts for any openings, the gentlewoman, the ranking member of the committee from New York, for any opening statements she may choose to make. The gentlewoman is recognized. And I'd like to tell the gentlewoman that we took just a minute to acknowledge Celeste and Barker and the terrible circumstances, and I know that you have had a chance to express your condolences, but I wanted you to know that we have done that, and the gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that you did. I remember when that child was born, and it's such an awful thing. My heart just breaks for Celeste and her family, and to lose a child is such a terrible thing. And by all accounts, although I think I only met him once, people on our staff tell us what a wonderful young man he was, with so full of promise. And it's just a tragedy. And thank you very much. I don't have an opening statement.
You know, there were a couple kids that used to run around a long time ago. One was Pete Sessions, that kid that used to run back and forth in here, and Barker West.
Yeah.
And Barker was a little bit younger than I was, but he was a kid with great enthusiasm that would show up, do his homework back over here with Celeste, and as you have duly noted, the loss of a child is staggering.
Celeste is living in Florida now, is that right?
It is my understanding that that's correct.
Fort Myers.
Fort Myers.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I want to be certain that I get to talk with her, too, as well.
And we'll make sure this, there will be a time to do that will be better, I'm sure, than now, and I know you recognize that, and I thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here today. You know, Mr. Pallone decided he was going to show up today because he wanted to see you.
Is that right?
That is right. So I would invite the gentleman to please come join
Chief Frank,
Congresswoman
I'm
Elmers.
flattered to death.
And, doesn't she look great? And I would remind both of you that you need to turn on that microphone so that we can hear you. We're delighted that you're here, and
Indeed.
thank you very much.
It's always good to see you, Frank.
And the gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
And see, I've already started not following the rules.
Well, you're just fine.
Vice Chair Fox and Ranking Member Slaughter. I am here today to testify in support of H.R. 2775, the No Subsidies Without Verification Act. The premise of this bill is quite simple. Serving as stewards of taxpayer dollars, one of the most important jobs that we do as members of this House. This is why I was struck by this summer's announcement from the Department of Health and Human Services in a 600-page rule issued during the 4th of July holiday that HHS stated that they would no longer verify that each applicant for the Obamacare exchange subsidies will simply not be verifying eligibility requirements. Instead, the Obama administration would now rely on self-attestation and sample audits when launching the Obamacare exchange subsidy program, an initiative that is estimated to cost over $1 trillion into the next decade. After receiving criticism, HHS announced that they would reverse course and extend audits to all applicants. Yet to date, the administration has issued no formal change in rulemaking to codify this policy. In other words, they are saying one thing and doing another. As it stands today, the rule issued by HHS reads, and I quote, the exchange may accept the applicant's attestation without further verification. As Ronald Reagan famously said, trust but verify. If history is any guide, these claims of accountability will be disregarded unless oversight is enforced and our laws keep up with the administration's rush to implement their own priorities. But even more menacing is how much taxpayers stand to lose with under the Obamacare and these provisions. This reinforces the need for the No Subsidies Without Verification Act. The bill would require certification systems to be in place so that administrators can successfully and consistently verify eligibility before any premium and cost-sharing credits are paid out. Similar language was adopted by the Senate, but the bill before us would implement a bipartisan consensus and protect taxpayer dollars by requiring the Inspector General of HHS to certify that income verification is in place before precious taxpayer dollars are wasted and abused. I urge the committee to adopt the resolution for consideration of H.R. 2775, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the gentleman's testimony. By the way, if you have anything to enter to the record that's written without objection, we'll enter that to that. Mr. Bloom, welcome back. I hope that your New Jersey suntan came with an opportunity to sleep in your own bed a night or two.
It was mostly at parades, Mr. Chairman,
Well,
but thank
good for you. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked to put my full statement in the record, but I'll try to shorten it a little. I'm sad to see that my Republican friends are at it again. Today we're 3 weeks away from October 1st, when millions of uninsured Americans will finally get access to quality, affordable health care. Meanwhile, for decades, insured Americans have just been one illness, injury, or job loss away from losing their existing coverage. But once the Affordable Care Act goes into full effect, it will finally provide security and peace of mind. And for those hardworking families that need additional tools to help them afford their health coverage, the ACA will help make coverage a reality. Mr. Chairman, I believe this bill is nothing more than another page out of the Republican playbook to delay, derail, and ultimately repeal the Affordable Care Act. But while you continue to attack the ACA here in Washington, community leaders and others across the nation will focus on helping uninsured Americans gain access to health care. I hate to even give credence to today's exercise, but I felt that I needed to appear before the Rules Committee to point out a number of facts. First and foremost, the bill today is totally unnecessary. HHS already has significant verification systems in place to ensure that families who are getting financial help are eligible for that help. HHS has stated in regulations that they will check and verify income on 100% of the applicants, and if someone receives payments that they determine aren't substantiated, those payments will have to be paid back. So we have 100% verification and reconciliation. In addition, the CBO and the JCT, the Tax Committee, in a new report, has stated that the program HHS has in place satisfies the certification requirements under Section 1414 of the law. So this bill is irrelevant. In light of this report, our Republicans have discovered these facts, and at the 12th hour, they're hastily amending the bill without any regular order, without any time for true consideration of the implications of the language. So this new amendment will now ask the IG to formally certify these verification systems, which does nothing but delay the start of the law and deny millions of hardworking Americans from getting the tax credits they're clearly eligible for. In addition, if the sponsor of the amendment had bothered to talk with the IG about the amendment's implications, she would know that the IG has no expertise, resources, or ability to complete this task. And my friends know very well that it's not the traditional role of the IG, and it's a mistake to give them this authority. It's nothing really but an effort to delay the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, and yet another effort to prevent the uninsured from gaining affordable coverage. And so I do urge members to oppose the bill, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman for his comments. I would ask the gentlewoman if she can please talk with us about the practical effect. Why would the government want to ensure that we knew who was going to qualify and who would not? Why is that important?
Well, I will just start by saying, first of all, for accountability. And as it is right now, you know, it's very unclear because the rule was in place for verification, and then as we know, it was removed over the 4th of July holiday, And now there are claims and discussion that the rule will be put back in place, and yet the rule remains unwritten. So you can see how this is very confusing to our consumers, the American taxpayers that are paying for it, but those who will be going on to the exchanges and the subsidies. And I would also like to point out as well to the issue of fairness. I agree with you in your opening statement that there are those who will be following the rules and the regulations and doing the right thing, and yet this opens the door for the possibility of fraudulent abuse, essentially. But there's also another point that I would like to make. One of the things that did remain in place were penalties. If an individual does go on to the exchange and it is filling out verification information or applying for a subsidy, there could be a $2,500 penalty paid if a mistake is made. There can be up to a $250,000 penalty if fraudulent abuse is verified. Where does that stand in this gray area that now exists? Can individuals end up having a penalty and yet they did not even realize what was happening at the time? I think this is an issue that needs to be addressed in a proactive manner before we actually move forward.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pallone, as I recall from the testimony that you and others gave before this committee several years ago, we recognized at the time that there were some 46 million Americans that did not have coverage, and that this was aimed for about half of them, about 23 million people. Is that correct?
Well, I always say that, and I'll try to be brief, that basically the ACA is designed to do three things.
Mr. Pallone, that's not what I asked.
All right. It's designed to cover the uninsured. It's designed to give a good benefit package for people who are insured, and it's designed to make sure that it's affordable. So you have people who have no insurance, you have people that have skeletal insurance, you have people that are paying so much for their insurance that they can't afford their rent or their utilities. So that it's designed to help all three categories.
Okay. Mr. Pallone, the question is, at the time testimony was given a few years ago, as I recall, there were 46 million people who were considered to be uninsured, and that this bill was expected to cover approximately 23 million. Is that your recollection?
I can't give you the exact figures, but again, I would stress that we're not only trying to cover the uninsured, but also those who have skeletal insurance, which is an even a larger group, don't have a good benefit package, and also people that are paying so much that they can't afford the rest, to everything else. And so there's all those things.
I'll see if I can ask another way. Mr. Pallone, did you expect that 100% of the American people would be covered of people in America would be covered by this bill?
I estimated at the time, upward of 96, 97%, because first of all, you remember, we don't include the undocumented, which is a significant portion of the population. And now after the Supreme Court's ruling and the lack of Medicaid expansion in a number of states, with Republican governors and legislators, you still have that problem as well. So
okay.
You'll have, most people will be covered, but not the undocumented. They obviously are prohibited from.
Well, we'll let the record reflect that we didn't talk about numbers, but that we did talk about a significant amount of people. So my question would be for you, if anybody can just show up and there's no verification. Mr. Chairman, that's a reality.
Look, first of all, that's not the case. Originally, this bill was asking for verification by the Secretary. That's clear now that that verification is in place, okay?
Can you please discuss that verification? That's what I want to get to.
Yeah, in other words, the Secretary has said that she's going to verify that the system is in place to guarantee 100% verification. And both the CBO and the Joint Committee on Taxation said that that is perfectly fine. That in fact, she has the ability to do that. So now what the sponsor has done is to move and say that the IG should do this. But I think the IG is totally inappropriate. First of all, they don't usually investigate things until after they happen. You don't have an IG investigation before the program is even put in place and before there's any fraud or abuse that's found. And they don't even have the ability to do that, in my opinion, right now, because the program hasn't even moved forward and isn't even being implemented. And so that just means that you're going to delay waiting for an IG investigation, which, as far as I can tell, the IG may not even be able to do. So, I mean, this is like, you know, one day you say, okay, we want verification, then the Secretary says we can do it, the CBO says she can do it, the Joint Committee says she can do it, so now you move to the IG, which doesn't traditionally do this type of thing until after there's a problem has taken place. We haven't even implemented the law. All this is going to do is delay. And we're seeing this in my committee. I don't want to keep saying it, but we had my Energy and Commerce Committee a couple of days ago send out letters and almost in a prosecutorial fashion to all the nonprofits that are now signed up to become navigators. And I have a food bank in my district that now has to answer all these questions, and the committee says, well, that's our oversight function, when they haven't even started to sign people up. It's just not fair, Mr. Chairman. It's not the way we operate around here. And I don't understand why you all continue to pursue, this, sort of prosecutorial fashion for something. All we're trying to do is help people get insurance. Why do we have to have the IG investigate something that hasn't happened? That's not what they do.
Well, I would say to you, if the Secretary promulgates a rule that says we're not going to do any income verification.
Well, she said she said the opposite.
Well, she may have changed her opinion, but
well, then why is she changing the bill? Why is she seeking this amendment to now go to the IG? If she was perfectly happy with the Secretary making that verification, then there probably wouldn't have been a problem with the bill. But now she's saying she wants the IG to do it. Well, that's not going to happen.
Thank you very much. If the gentlewoman could perhaps restate her testimony that she's made to the committee.
Well, I think the issue here is that, yes, although HHS has said that they would do it, they haven't actually explained how they will do it. So the question remains in place. In the meantime, tax credits are flowing for those who are applying and on the exchange. And it will only stop if the audit finds a problem. It could be, as my colleague has pointed out, it could be months. It could be 6, 12 months in an estimated manual verification. So the point here is the approach that was taken in this bill is that if HHS had told us how the intent was laid out, then perhaps this was not necessary. But because they have not, it is incumbent upon us to protect the taxpayer dollars in the process moving forward.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our colleagues, particularly my colleague from North Carolina, for being here. I have no questions. Thank you.
Gentlewoman from New York's recognized.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. Maybe everybody doesn't have the information that I've got, but I have a document here from HHS telling exactly how they're going to do it. Have you seen that? It was put out on July 9th. That describes exactly how they're going to do it. No money is flowing to anybody right now. They're not going to sign up till October, and it won't take effect till January. And it seems pretty thorough to me. I mean, there's an article here, even 2 articles, one from CMS and one from the Secretary, and the second, CNBC commentary from John Harwood. May I ask unanimous consent to put these 3 in the record? Because if anybody reads this record and thinks that nobody knows how this is going to work, I would like them to know that we do have that information. They've had it for a couple months. I don't have any more questions. I'm just prepared to vote tomorrow for the 41st time to see what we can do to mess up health care. The history of this battle is, I hope I last long enough to see it. So let me put these in the record, and I have no questions.
Thank you very much. The gentleman, Chairman Cole's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, welcome to both of you, and to my good friend from New Jersey. I wish you were campaigning someplace else today. I really do. You've been a great senator, you're a great House member, and always a pleasure to see my friend from North Carolina. I think you make a fair point when you say, obviously, we're interested in repealing, delaying, amending, no question about that. But I think it's worth noting the 40 times we've done it, 7 of those bills have actually passed into law. And so they were improvements that a Democratic Senate, Democratic President decided. For instance, all of us agreed after the fact, even the proponents, that filing 1099s for every $600 annual purchase from a vendor was going to be overly burdensome, and so we did that. I think we argued during the debate over the original bill that the long-term care proposal, sort of assisted living, was not financially sustainable. Secretary Sebelius, to her credit, ran the numbers and said, that's probably right, and that's gone too. So not every one of these bills, while you're certainly right in terms of saying we don't like the bill and we want it repealed. I think that's a fair point. But a lot of these measures also have the purpose of trying to make it better, or from our standpoint, less onerous, we would say. In this case, and I'm not looking to try and it seems to me, if I were a proponent, and I just want your response to this, one of my great concerns would be going too fast in this. And look, people are people, and I think most people are honest, but not everybody's honest. And in a program of this size, there's going to be some fraud and abuse. We have it in every other program. I don't think this is more or less. But having the ability to make very sure that that doesn't occur, I actually think strengthens the program and probably makes it more credible. Because if there are a lot of abuses or, high-profile abuses, I think that would undermine confidence. So this, to me, falls sort of in that category of, yes, you're right to oppose the bill, but you might want to take a look at this. Do you have no concern that there will be some fraud, and are you really totally comfortable that what we have in place at this point will provide sufficient verification on the income question?
I'm satisfied that there would be sufficient verification. Look, I'm just trying to make a few points here, and I'll be very calm in doing it because you've been very fair. First of all, the bill, the way it was originally proposed, was asking for the HHS, the Secretary, to verify. She has said, I can do that. I have the regulations in place, and I can verify that. And the CBO and the Joint Tax Committee said they agreed with her. She has the ability to do that. The regulations in place will accomplish that goal. So now what I'm saying, the amendment before you today now says, well, let's just forget about that for the time being. Now I want the IG to certify. The IG doesn't traditionally do that. That's not their function. And I'm not sure they can even perform that function. Traditionally, the IG comes in when there's been some suggestion that a fraud and abuse has already taken place, usually on a widespread basis. That's the accusation. I mean, I've asked for the IG myself to come in. But this program hasn't even begun. And since if the original idea was for the Secretary to verify, I don't think the Democrats, including myself, would have even had a problem with that. Probably may have even voted for the bill tomorrow if that had been kept that way. But now it's moving on and saying, no, let's the IG do it. I don't think that makes any sense, and I think it's only a delaying tactic because it will take months probably before the IG could even do that, or even if they said that they could do it. Now, the other thing I would say is this. If someone does overpay or gets too much of a subsidy, remember you still have the fact that when they have to file their income tax, that gets reconciled. And so they would have to pay it back when they file their income tax for 2000.
That would be based on the assumption that everybody is fair and honest. We know
I understand that, but all I'm trying to say is, if you were here 2 years from now and you said, look, there's been all these problems, then I might say, okay, let's the IG investigate. But there's no reason for them to do that now. That's why I say it's just a delaying tactic.
Well, I think a fair point maybe on the IG, because I think you make a very good point as to whether or not that's the normal function. But I do, whether it's this or another piece of legislation, I do have this concern, and I have the concern, obviously I don't like the legislation, but I have the real concern that this will take place. I mean, I think we're sort of sailing a little bit into the unknown. Let me turn to our colleague from North Carolina and ask you essentially the same question. What kind of concerns do you have that we would have major, fraud or multiple incidents?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's based in the idea that initially, before even implementation, We are in an area, a gray area. There's not clarification. There's not clarity as to how this should move forward. And when you have a situation like that, you're just creating the environment for the possibility. I mean, it may very well be that every individual that goes onto the exchange is giving accurate information to the best, of their knowledge. But when we have this situation that the government has now come in, HHS again had a rule in place for a verification system, and then actually removes that, and then after criticism of that, puts out to Ms. Slaughter, our ranking member's point, a fact sheet on how it should be implemented. But when the consistent language remains in place, which is, again, as it stands today, the rule issued by HHS is the exchange may accept the applicant's attestation without further verification. That stands because that has not been changed in writing yet as another rule. So we're creating a situation here that would be the fodder, the environment for the possibility of fraud. So to the question of do I believe, I would like to believe that every individual that goes onto the exchange will do the right thing. But there is nothing in place that is going to account for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized. Gentleman has no questions. Gentleman from Florida is recognized. Gentleman has no question. Judge Hastings. Gentleman is recognized.
To the Rules Committee. Congresswoman Elmers, do you have the same concern about other government subsidies that are afforded to either individuals or to corporations?
As it stands today, we're dealing with this particular issue, especially where the implementation of the Affordable Care Act is going to move forward. I would like to, again, believe that whether we're talking about individuals or whether we're talking about businesses, no matter how large, small business, medium business, large business, would all be doing the same thing and not taking advantage of loopholes. I believe with the language as it is right now and the statements that we will be verifying 100%, but yet not being actually written, we're creating that loophole. And yes, those will take advantage.
Well, let me share with my colleague from Oklahoma, my good friend, that I feel very strongly that once the program is implemented fully, that they're, based on the history of all other programs, there's going to be some fraud and abuse. There's fraud and abuse in Medicare, as you and I know. There's fraud and abuse in Medicaid. There's fraud and abuse in Social Security, and I could go on and on and on. So I share your concern in that regard, but I think Mr. Pallone is correct that involve the Inspector General at this point where no fraud has been demonstrated for the reason that the Act has not been implemented, I think is a more salient point. I also firmly disagree that the Act itself is not working. I held 3 healthcare fora during the August recess. In addition, with my colleague from West Palm Beach, Lois Franco, we met with healthcare professionals and the regional director of CMS made a presentation to us, and it was a well-attended, hospital officials, physicians, VA, broad-based. And we didn't come from that meeting with any negatives. And in the fora that I held, the thing that was surprising to me was how conversant people were. And a young lady asked the same question that you are raising right now with regard to the subsidy and how the Internal Revenue was going to handle it. But I think that there are millions of Americans that are receiving preventive care. So the Act is working. I think that those who have insurance, whose children can stay on their policies until they're 26, demonstrates that the Act is working. I don't think that any of this is hasty. We passed this Act 3 years ago, and the Supreme Court approved it. It's the law of the land, in spite of what some say. And with seniors having received, with reference to their prescription drugs, as much as more than $6 billion at this point, demonstrates that the act is working. The fact that one can't be denied because of pre-existing conditions, which I think is the most salient point of all of this. And that is working. And I didn't meet a single soul. I went to the Vita kidney analysis. I could go on and on. I visited 3 cancer research facilities, and I didn't meet a single person in there that was not satisfied that they would not be denied insurance now because of their pre-existing conditions. But let me come to a more recent publication from, not publication, but letter written to Chairman Upton over the signature of Jim, I hesitate to try to pronounce his name, Esquea, Esquea, it seems, the Assistant Secretary for Legislation for the Department of Health and Human Services. And while Ms. Slaughter has introduced into the record the myth versus fact health insurance marketplace on track that came from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services that was posted July 9th, which I believe your staff showed you. I'm curious, Ms. Elmas, whether or not you had a copy of the August 22nd letter, 2013, that I believe addresses some of your concerns, and I'm curious if you feel the same. If you will permit me, I must lift from this letter and ask the chair first if I may offer it into the record, the full statement.
Without objection.
Yeah, I will not.
If I could ask the gentleman,
Yes.
if there will be things that are contained in there that you'd like to question the gentleman, I'd like to ask if somebody on your side could make some quick copies, allowing her a chance
Do you
to see
not
a
have
copy of the
this?
letter unless she has that.
Okay, now she has it in hand.
Thank you very much. And if you could
And-
refer to perhaps where that might be judged. that would be-
May I ask also, I apologize, the fact sheet that I have has the date of August 5th on it. I do not have a
You're
date
correct.
of July 9th.
You're correct regarding that.
So that is the
The
initial...
one that Ms. Slaughter introduced. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure there wasn't another one.
There's an
but-
August 5th, and then there's another one from CMS, July 9th. But this is more recent to Chairman Upton in response to, evidently, a letter that he sent on October 1st, 2013. In the body of it, it points to what I believe is important. It's important to note that advance payments of premium tax credits are provided directly to the health insurance plan, not to the consumer. In addition, individuals seeking to purchase insurance in the marketplace must attest under penalty of perjury that they are not filing false information. The Affordable Care Act also provides for penalties when an individual provides false or fraudulent information. Individuals on whose behalf tax credits are provided must acknowledge, before they receive advance payments of the tax credit, that they understand that the payments are reconciled at the close of the year. They must also file income taxes for the year in which the credit is received, and all advance payments of premium tax credits are reconciled with the IRS at the end of the year. The marketplace, in a previous paragraph, when an individual applies for insurance affordability programs and has income in the premium tax credit range, the marketplace will input information related to whether or not he or she has access to employer-sponsored coverage that meets the minimum value standard. This process is assisted by the employer coverage tool, a page that is included in the marketplace's single streamlined application. And I might add, I went online with the regional director to see this particular information. Applicants may be asked, may ask their employer to help them fill out the employer coverage tool. One of the concerns I have is that everybody can't go online, and so I've worked with libraries and others in the area, since my state is one that is not establishing a marketplace, it became incumbent upon many of us to try to do what we can to ensure that the public understands all the various dynamics. The point that I'm making is in this letter, if you read it in whole rather than the matters that I've lifted that might be construed out of context, I think you will find that HHS has a plan, and that plan includes the circumstances that an individual who applies for the subsidy will have to abide. And any response?
Yes. What I would respond to you is, yes, and this, of course, the latter is actually a response to Chairman Upton of Energy and Commerce explaining the whole process. However, what you do not have in front of you is the actual rule change to go back to saying that they will be verifying income. That is where this was initiated with their initial rule change, that they would not be verifying income status, that they would not be verifying eligibility. And there is not a rule that has been written again to change that. That is the issue.
I take your point. I do believe that their plan is to allow that when individuals do make their requests, that all of this information that they have to provide is in and of itself a check. But I take your point. I'm opposed to your measure and will reflect same in my vote. Thank you. All right. Yes, Mr. Pallone. Yeah. Put your mic on, Frank. I'm sorry.
So in other words, what I'm trying to stress is the way this bill was originally written until this amendment, they were asking the Secretary to certify or verify that the rules and the procedures that you put together, that you were reading there, would in effect, she would be willing to say that this is 100% verification. And the CBO and the JCT said that that would work. Now it's changed because of this amendment to go one step further and saying that's not good enough, we want the IG to certify. I didn't have a problem with the original bill. If we hadn't had this amendment, I would be here today supporting the legislation.
Understood.
So that's what I'm saying. I think this whole issue of HHS certification or verification is really a non-issue at this point.
Right. Well, I've learned in the last year, with all of the votes that we've had and now the 41st, that my colleagues in the majority are obviously unhappy with this particular measure. But I've also learned that they kind of changed the methodology of going about trying to defund it now from replace or repeal and replace to repeal and defund. And I don't see or hear alternatives that are going to satisfy the requirements. I'm an advocate and have been for a long time, long before I ever heard Barack Obama's name. I advocated universal health care in this country. It's an abominable sin, in my judgment, that we allow the circumstances that I saw just in, and I've seen it for years, but just in the past break. I went to 2 emergency rooms and stayed there for 6 hours watching the individuals come and people asking the questions with all sorts of problems. No matter what we do, if we don't do something, and that's what this legislation does, ultimately what we're going to allow is people are still going to present in emergency rooms, and all of us in this room and other taxpayers in our respective constituencies are going to wind up having to pay. So somehow or another, I believe as Americans, we owe each other a responsibility to ensure that all people in this country, and particularly those who are vulnerable. I am so opposed to those who would allow for the poorest among us to be without health insurance and to not be cared for. And I don't believe people in this Congress, Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, are so callous as to allow that poor people, the poorest among us, will be left behind. And this act itself is going to leave 30 million people behind. and I don't think they should be left behind. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back my time.
Chairman yields back his time. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Webster, is recognized. No question. Gentleman from Colorado. No question. Gentleman, Dr. Burgess from Louisville, Texas.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Elmers, you and I are probably the only people in this room who have ever rendered care to someone with no expectation of payment at any time or any level. So I believe you and I have some understanding of the situation.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, just as a physician, but I worked all my life as an attorney and knew damn well I wasn't going to be paid. So I'm in y'all's category.
Wait a minute. You get these court-appointed deals where you get all this lavish funding from the county. So don't just cry me a river about you poor lawyers. I just can't stand it.
Doc, I grew up in the halcyon days of segregation as an attorney, and I want you to know that I wasn't eligible for whatever reason to receive those court appointments. And so I represented people just like you did, probably for grape jelly and chickens. But by and large, I just want to make sure that you understand that there's another profession that suffers.
Reclaiming my time. I'm far too young. Nobody paid us in grape jelly. We just provided the care without any expectation of payment. And I dare say that still goes on. But Mr. Pallone brought up a point about that the people will be, under the penalty of perjury, they'll be required on this attestation to say that they get what they're due, what they say they're due to get. But let me just ask you a practical matter. The check that is written for the subsidy, if someone is, and maybe they're not even being purposely untruthful, maybe they just, this is confusing stuff, maybe they don't know. Maybe their navigator didn't steer them right. But if there is money put forward to someone who was not eligible, the money actually goes to the insurance company, doesn't it? So at the end of the year, when now we are going to, under penalty of perjury, you got something that you said you were eligible for which you were not eligible, and we didn't know it because there was self-attestation, but you led us astray. So is the Attorney General going to go after that person for perjury, that poor person who didn't understand what they were signing? Yes.
It all operates through your income tax, right? I mean, it's no different. So how, when you fill out your income tax, or you get your refund or pay your taxes, I mean, I assume that there's some kind of a statement there that you're signing that you're telling the truth and all that. I mean, what's the difference?
But Mr. Plone, when you sit down with your navigator,
it's a tax credit.
Next month, when you sit down with your navigator to calculate how much subsidy you get for buying an insurance policy, and I'm not saying anybody purposely misleads, but what if they're wrong in their estimation? What if in fact it is not correct? Is the full force of the federal government going to come after that single poor individual to try to get this money back when they don't even have the money? I mean, the insurance company got the money.
But again, look, you have two processes here. You have the fact that the Secretary has set up a process and people have to certify. That's what we're going into. And both, CBO and JCT are now saying that works, and the Secretary can verify 100%. Okay, so there may be some cases where, they get wrong information, and then your tax return is another check, if you will, next year when you fill it out for what tax credit you were supposed to receive. Now, I mean, there's always going to be, as Mr. Cole said, there's always going to be some cases where it doesn't work, but all I'm saying is, why are you asking for the IG to come in and do an investigation of this, which they don't even do, before the fact, before it's even implemented? There's no indication that we're going to have fraud and abuse. You already have the verification from the Secretary. You have the income tax at the end of the year. How far do you want to go here? I mean, it's getting ridiculous.
But look, you and I both sit on the same committee, and we have heard from the people at CMS who come in and talk to us about the difficulty they have pursuing cases where an inappropriate expenditure
I'm not
has
arguing
occurred,
with you.
and the pay and chase mechanism is one that is fraught with peril as far as the taxpayer is concerned. Why wouldn't we do everything in our power
Because
to make
now
sure that
it's,
these funds are appropriately expended.
Because I think there's more than enough in place right now, and I don't want to keep repeating myself. Between HHS, between the tax.
Mr. Malone, with all due respect, they don't do a very good job right now in Medicare and Medicaid as
But
far as
also,
inappropriate
you're trying to
expenditure.
look, I'm just repeating myself, Mike. The fact of the matter is that this bill now is going to the point of no return and asking for the IG to come in before this is even implemented. That's not their job. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm repeating myself. We're not going to agree here, but I'm just pointing out that this next step with the IG, which is all this really bill does with this amendment, it's way beyond the pale. It's just totally, it's nothing but a delaying tactic.
Well, reclaiming my time, I would simply say that I think the gentlelady from North Carolina has a very valid position that she's making, and that we should do everything in our power to make this an appropriate use of the expenditure of federal funds in this regard. And let's face it, you're only harming the people that you intend to help if you don't ensure that those funds are appropriately dispensed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back the time.
Gentleman yields back his time. I do not believe I see any member that's seeking recognition at this time. I want to thank both of you for taking time to appear today, for not only representing the ideas that are important for us to further not only understand this issue, but be able to argue them on the floor tomorrow. And I want to thank both of you for that time, and you're now excused. Thank you very much. Committee will now be in receipt of a motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee grant H.R. 2775 to condition the provision of premium and cost-sharing subsidies under the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act upon a certification that a program to verify household income and other qualifications for such subsidies is operational and for other purposes a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour debate with 40 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce, and 20 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Ways and Means. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The bill provides that the amendment printed in the Rules Committee report shall be considered as adopted, and the bill as amended shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill as amended. Finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
You've now heard the motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina. Is there further debate or amendment to this rule? The gentleman is recognized from Massachusetts.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move that the committee grant H.R. 2775 an open rule so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to the bill on the floor. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, just add a comment here that after a long 5-week recess, we come back to consider a bill that has had no committee hearings, none, or no markups. And in the haste of rushing this bill through the process, the majority has just discovered that what they're proposing is actually already being put in place by the administration. Now we are self-executing an amendment that also has had no regular order, which proposes something that is technically impossible. So we move from an irrelevant bill to one that is impossible. I guess the question is, what are we really doing here? So I urge this bill, I urge the members of the committee to vote for an open rule so that all members can be heard on this issue.
I appreciate the amendment by the gentleman from Massachusetts. I would point to testimony that was entered into the record that points to a $250 billion figure that's based upon a possible fraudulent claim that's consistent with the earned income tax credit of 25% that recipients do not qualify. At a program that is as large as the Affordable Care Act, in fact, could have massive fraud that is attached to it. The Republican Party, in fact, today has had an opportunity to state a case about a rule that we have not seen a change in that rule. While we have heard language that has been associated with that, the rule has not been changed, and thus, accordingly, the closed rule that we have discussed today. The Further discussion on the amendment by the gentleman from Massachusetts. Seeing none, the vote will now be on the amendment. Those in favor of the McGovern amendment signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Noes have it, noes have it. Gentleman asks for a recorded vote.
Ms. Fox? No. Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Cole? Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent? No. Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Ross-Leighton? Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, no. Ms. Slaughter? Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern? Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis? Aye. Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Chairman, no.
Clerk will report.
4 yeas, 7 nays.
The amendment's not agreed to. Further amendment or discussion? Seeing none, the vote will now be on the motion that's been made by the gentleman from North Carolina. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. I want to acknowledge that there could be, and we do expect there to be, further action by the majority this week that we would expect to be able to notify the minority of when we will next meet, and we will have handling this bill the gentleman, Dr. Burgess from Texas.
For this bill we just voted for, that would be Mr. Polis.
Mr. Polis will be handling that.
I would like to ask you, though,
Democrats.
if there's anything new on the CR. Will it be a straight CR, or will it be things appended to it?
Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, the Republican conference met this morning. It is our hope that we would have a CR that would be available not only for each of us as members to understand, but also the American public. We had an opportunity to discuss that with our membership today, and currently there's information that is being provided to the American public, as well as members, consistent with our ability to understand what the CR would be. I would think that it will be something that will be well understood, hopefully by tonight. I do not anticipate that it would be anything more than the two items which has generally been discussed, and that is the CR and the provisions about, as Judge Hastings noted, the defunding of Obamacare that would be within this piece of
Will that
legislation.
be a single piece of legislation?
In fact, I would expect that it would be in a single rule. I don't know whether you're trying to, without trying to second guess me.
I really want to know if we're going to have a vote on CR.
I think that there will be one vote that
One
would
vote
be taken
for-
on that.
I see.
So once again, not trying to second guess you.
Yeah.
You're not trying to second guess me, but I would anticipate that as we get further to understanding feedback from our members about the ideas that are floated, that it would be this week, and that we will have that text available for people to understand, and as always on the website, so that people could have a clear understanding. Yes, ma'am.
It will be filed this evening. No
It-
layover.
You know what? It is my understanding that we will follow the rules, and I'm going to try and have us stick to that, and it's my understanding that we're going to be prepared to do that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just a second. Did I answer?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you
sir.
very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that information. Let me turn to yet another subject that obviously is the topic of the day, the past week, and likely to be in the future. Is there any anticipation of the majority putting anything on the floor this week or next regarding Syria?
I thank the gentleman for his question, and as a matter of fact, the gentleman did acknowledge a prior discussion that we had before as we greeted each other this afternoon upon our return, along with the gentleman, Mr. McGovern, Mr. Polis. I would anticipate that this evening the President is going to lay out what appears to be a plan that he is developing. We have, through press reports and other contacts that have been made, we had understood, at least I have through the Speaker, that he is going to wait to hear how the President presents not only that, but the issues that have been presented by the Secretary of State, the gentleman from Massachusetts, as he is talking with other nations about perhaps a resolution, what is known as the Russian plan that would be considered. So we're going to try and allow them that opportunity to address the nation. And then, to answer your question, it would not surprise me if they announce something that they're trying to accomplish. I do not anticipate we would have a vote this week, and I am not going to plan anything until we see what the outcome based upon the President's request to Congress, because, as you recall, the President did agree to our satisfaction that he would engage Congress on this issue, which I wholeheartedly agree with, and I believe you do too. Yes, sir. Is there further question from any of our members? I want to thank each of you for taking time to be here this afternoon, once again acknowledging, as we did up front, Celeste and her circumstance. I want to thank each of you. Welcome back, and the committee has now finished its work for the day.